what?
Turn off the video.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Brianna Starbuck. I'm the Communications and Engagement Officer for the City of Glenwood Springs. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We will be getting started here shortly, promptly at 6 p.m. Thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to providing you an update. I'm the Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We're still a touch early, but for folks who are already online, if you are joining us via Zoom, please note that Spanish interpretation is available for this evening's meeting. That interpretation is available now. If you click interpretation, you can select your preferred language, and we do recommend all Zoom attendees go ahead and select their preferred language, whether that's English or Spanish, so that you have the best audio possible. And we'll go ahead and get started here right now. Again, hello, welcome everyone. My name is Brianna Starbuck. I am the Communications and Engagement Officer for the City of Glenwood Springs, and I am very grateful to have everyone joining us here tonight for the City of Glenwood Springs community town hall webinar on homelessness. Before we get started, just a bit of housekeeping. Again, Spanish interpretation is available for tonight's meeting, and you can view those instructions here on the screen. You can select your preferred language by selecting interpretation. We did take questions beforehand, and so we'll be starting with those towards the end of this meeting, but then throughout the meeting, feel free to enter any additional questions into the Q&A function of the chat. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, this meeting is being recorded and streamed live to the City of Glenwood Springs YouTube channel for anyone who was unable to join us this evening. If we are unable to get to any questions on today's call, we will be able to respond to those on our website and make sure we get all the answers that we can to everyone. And then 1 second, it looks like we have a slight issue with our interpreter. 1 moment. Ah, yes. It wouldn't be a Zoom call if there wasn't a tiny little hiccup. So thank you for bearing us with us on that. We'll go ahead and continue. For today's call, just to get us all centered on the same page, for tonight's meeting, our objectives are to provide an opportunity for the community to ask questions about this topic and this issue. And we really wanted to do some community education about specifically what the City of Glenwood Springs and what law enforcement can and cannot do. We'll be covering a number of items this evening. We'll kick it over here shortly to our panel, and Steve Boyd will kick us off with some introductions and operating principles. We'll head into some brief remarks, and then we'll open it up to our question and answer. And so with that, I will go ahead and kick it over to City of Glenwood Springs City Manager Steve Boyd.
Thank you, Bree. Hi, everybody. Appreciate everybody joining us tonight. I'm Steve Boyd. I'm the city manager here in Glenwood Springs, and I'll just take a quick second to go around in our room here and ask everybody to introduce themselves and their titles and what they do.
Hi, I'm Ron Tarullo. I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Glenwood Springs.
Good evening, I'm Joseph Deras. I'm the Chief of Public Safety at the Police and Fire here in Glenwood Springs.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lou Vallario, Garfield County Sheriff.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ben Sollars. I'm the District Attorney for the 9th Judicial District, which is Garfield, Pitkin, and Rio Blanco counties.
Good evening. My name is Robin Pitt. I'm the Fire Marshal from the Fire Department and Fire District.
Okay, thanks. There are people in this community that have either fallen on hard times or are facing a crisis, and it makes it difficult to find stable housing sometimes. We do have partners like West Mountain Regional Health Alliance, for example, that help that community. We're very grateful for all those people. I will sometimes walk some of these camps with our police department, and our police officers know these homeless folks by name. They know where they came from and what they're doing. It's always a respectful conversation between the two of them. But that's who often gets the call to reach out to this community on behalf of the city. So there are a few different types of homeless. Tonight, we're going to focus on the city's response to issues that are arising from the homeless in the area that are not interested in taking advantage of those wraparound services for whatever reason. So I'm going to turn it over to Chief Deras just to say a few things. And then we did get quite a few questions that have come in. So we'll try to get to those pretty quickly here so we make sure that we get those answered. Chief?
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, so there's been several conversations in our community over the last several years, and then more recently about some concerning behaviors that people have seen in our community that affect our residents, our businesses, and our visitors. And I think largely this is a great opportunity for us to collaboratively share with you and provide some information about what we can do for people that find themselves in this predicament, what the city has done for them, and then some of the limitations that we have with respect in addressing some of these calls that we receive, calls for service that we receive. And largely, and this is not a problem unique to Glenwood Springs or any mountain town. It's certainly a societal problem or a national problem that almost every community in America really is really challenged in dealing with effectively. So I think this will give us an opportunity to answer some of your questions and maybe provide some education about how we can work together and what we have been doing with our partners, the Sheriff's Office, and of course, through the District Attorney's Office and the court system as well. Sheriff, would you like to add anything to that?
Just real briefly, I would reiterate what the chief said. It isn't just a local problem. It's obviously countywide, statewide, nationwide problem we're dealing with homelessness. Some of the issues that we deal with are, again, those balances between what's criminal and then what is more societal. From the Sheriff's Office perspective, of course, we deal with criminal law, although we certainly do what we can to kind of help our communities and help society. But one of the things a lot of people need to understand is it's kind of it's not a solution, but it's something you just have to understand is a lot of people that are homeless choose to be. It's not a matter of, they get thrown out of their house, they lost their job, and some of that does exist. But so many of the people we contact over and over again choose to be homeless for a lot of reasons. It could be an economic thing. It could be a mental health issue. It could be a variety of things. But those are the people that are the ones that we deal with on a regular basis and don't necessarily appreciate or enjoy some of the services that are available. They just choose to be homeless and want to camp out on the side of a hill or somewhere, and then we have to deal with them.
Did you add anything?
Sure. Thanks to the panel and thanks to everybody at home or watching online. The issue here tonight, sort of the intersection of homelessness, public safety, and community impact, I think is significant and worthy of the attention it's getting here now. It's a real issue and it deserves an honest conversation. My role as a prosecutor, I think it's important that you recognize that everybody's entitled to dignity and due process, but they're not entitled to endanger the lives and safety of others. For us, certainly it is a responsibility to hold accountable those offenders that commit crimes and to offer opportunities at reform for those that genuinely need it and genuinely deserve it. I think that this community is focused on compassion. I think this community recognizes that there's boundaries to that. So I think it's a worthy conversation to have so that we can try to strike that balance.
Robin?
Sure. I know that there's a lot of concern from our residents in terms of the fire safety in our community, especially with our wild end urban interface. And I'll let you know that there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes. Through our fire and life safety program, we go out and we contact businesses around town. It's not only the inside or the occupancy that we focus on, it's also the outside, right? So we focus on that storage of combustibles. And it's clearly laid out in the fire code that we can say, hey, you need to put these things in that dumpster. That dumpster needs to be enclosed. You can't just be putting mattresses outside. And so we are educating and through code enforcement, targeting businesses around town that are maybe providing these opportunities for these folks who take things up on the hillside. And so we're going to try and prevent those things from happening.
Thank you. And then I'd like to share with everybody that we find these gatherings of these individuals and population we're talking about many places in next to or adjacent to the waterways, the Colorado River, the Roaring Fork River, and up on our trail system. And so again, with us, we have Rodney Tarullo here from the Parks and Rec Department, who oversees our trails and park systems. And I think I would like to offer a few comments about how we're doing and maybe the efforts that we're taking to keep an eye on things up in our trails.
Well, obviously, trails, public spaces, our parks, our public restrooms, gathering places like Bethel Plaza. Our department within the city gets the opportunity to address graffiti, vandalism, destruction, those types of things. And so we are involved on a daily basis in trying to keep the community nice and work with those that are unhoused to take care of the property that belongs to all of our citizens.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna go to questions.
Yeah, I mean, with that, we are here for you guys tonight. So I think Brianna's going to be our MC and has a number of questions. So Bree, I'll turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. As I mentioned before, we did receive a number of questions beforehand. So we're going to start with the questions that we received beforehand, and then we've already have a number of questions that have come in through the Q&A. Again, if we don't get to all the questions, we will post answers to those on the city's website. But we'll go ahead and begin right at the top. We got a question that is, please share data regarding citations, arrests, and length of any detainment or jail time of unhoused persons for the past 5 years. And I think I'm going to go ahead and have a couple of you address that one, as it sounds like there's parts of that that are for different agencies.
Like,
I can jump in
Sure.
on this if you want. I don't know that I have the data available to me to go back that far. You know, I am in the first year of my first term as the district attorney, but I did look at least throughout the 9th Judicial District, district-wide. At this point in time, last year, our office had filed 38 cases of trespass. I use that as kind of a marker to understand where we were at. By way of comparison, this year, I think of July 1 or July 5 of 2025, our office has filed 55 cases of trespass. And so that identifies or shows a 45% increase, which is evidence that both we are taking that seriously, we being the prosecution office, but also that law enforcement is taking these issues seriously, because we don't get those cases unless law enforcement is bringing those to us. I think maybe I'll stop there as far as the numbers.
Sure. I would add to that, in City of Glenwood Springs, we also have our own municipal court, in addition to the district attorney and the county court, where we will issue citations that may be dispositioned through that municipal court. I can tell you that the bulk of our work during the day shift hours anyway, largely is focused on calls in response to complaints about homeless individuals creating a disturbance or some other kind of quality of life event. I can tell you, though, that what's important about that is we oftentimes need a victim who wants to come forward and either sign a citation or be part of that prosecution process. And overwhelmingly, and I don't want to speak for the DA's office, but we're a little bit hamstrung there, because people are quick to report the problem to us, which is great. But then once we get there, how far we can proceed with that, we're a little bit limited, because we necessarily don't always have a victim, or the person doesn't want to remain in the area and be part of that process. Maybe down the road have to come back into court in response to a subpoena or something like that to help us with that. So just today, I received a phone call from a business person who saw a person that they complained about yesterday. The person was arrested, were given a citation, and then they saw him back out in our community again today. And they're quite concerned about that. But it's important to understand that there is a process, and to the DA's point earlier, they are presumed innocent until proven guilty. And so there's a pre-conviction process where we just can't keep everybody in jail who haven't been convicted of a crime, particularly if it's a nonviolent crime, There are a number of factors that influence that. And so law enforcement, we respond to those things and we take the action that we can immediately. And then it goes through this court process. And although it might not be as timely as people would like, that's our system here in our country. And I'm not in a position to speak to what those parameters are. That's outside the scope of what we do. But I just want to explain that process to you. So when you do see an offender out there, don't assume that we haven't done our job or we as law enforcement aren't responding to the complaint. We will, when it's appropriate, and we do exactly what we can do, and then we turn that over to the courts, and then they're certainly free to do and disposition those cases as they see fit. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair. You know, the most common, using that trespass as an example, that's what I collected the data for. You know, that is identified as a petty offense. Just for reference, the maximum possible penalties associated with a petty offense is 10 days in jail. Sentencing options also include, well, beyond the jail, things like probation, where folks might be managing substance abuse addictions or mental illness, and you know, probation is a tool to provide people those treatment resources in order to help them you know, get over the issues that are preventing them from sort of leading a more pro-social life. Because of the prospect or the limitations of that, you know, it does in fact result in less motivation for folks when the worst scenario that can happen to them includes 10 days in jail. On the bond piece, and you know, Sheriff Vallario can certainly speak to that, but from our legal side, petty offenses are those that mandate a person receive a personal recognizance bond. And so upfront, pre-conviction, where those are presumed innocent, as Chief Deras pointed out, you know, the likelihood of somebody remaining in custody is zero, frankly, and the likelihood that they're going to be released back into the community in short order, unless and until they've been convicted of the crime, you're not going to see sort of the tangible results of the arrest, at least until that due process part has taken place.
You know, so what's frustrating to us and it's frustrating to you is kind of the repetitive process. Clearly, we're dealing with the same people over and over again, but also clearly, as the DA just explained, this is a petty offense. This is the lowest of all levels of offenses. And those aren't decisions made by us. Those are decisions made by lawmakers. They've decided that trespassing and some of these other issues are very low risk, very low offense crimes. So there's a lot of limitations. Since I run the jail, and I'm kind of confer with what the DA said, is they're in and out. I mean, there's an old joke about the revolving door, but these are no cash bond charges, so we can't require them to post a bond. It's an automatic, what we call a personal recognizance bond. So it's just a matter of paperwork and they're back out the door. Sometimes, you know, they might stay or maybe get a shower or a meal or something, and then they're right back to where they are again. So it's a repetitive thing that we're not solving the problem. We're just continuing to sort of repeat over and over again what happens. Sometimes these folks will be summoned and they won't show for a court date, and that leads to a higher level of fail to appear warrant for their arrest. And sometimes when we contact them, they can be arrested for those and put in jail for a while. But even those things are often short term, because they'll see a judge the next day and they'll either they'll either be dismissed or there'll be something that happens. So it's frustrating for us too. And again, more from the law enforcement side, not so much the overall community, you know, impact and what we can do to help from the community side, because it is literally a revolving door. It's over and over again, and we deal with the same people because of how our laws are stratified and what a very low level offense these trespassing issues are.
And before we move any further, I would just like to say, and it might have been said earlier, and I apologize if it was, and I don't want to be redundant, but law enforcement, we address the conduct, not a person's social standing in the community. So we've received complaints about people acting bizarrely, or I don't like the way he smells, or he's acting, or what have you. But again, we deal with the conduct that is unlawful, not their social status. And so it might be offensive or unsettling or unsightly, whatever that might be, that might not rise to the level of a crime. And so people get very frustrated with that about somebody's behavior. And it's really important that people understand that, because that's a legal standard, not a person's personal standard that we're necessarily responding to.
I think that's an important point because, again, like, for example, public intoxication. Those used to be crimes. They're not anymore. Now it's a matter of, a detox facility or some other means or some, rehabilitation type methods. It's something that we deal with from the law enforcement side, but it's not a criminal matter. Years ago, there used to be laws against vagrancy or, not being able to sustain self-support and again, public intoxication. And those have all been ruled unconstitutional. Essentially, people under the Constitution have a right to be homeless if they want to be. They have a right not to have a job if they don't want to. They have a right to be intoxicated. And when it gets to the point that's affecting their health, now we step in, but it's not in a criminal part. It's a health issue that, we need to bring them someplace where they're safe and they don't wind up, dying on the street or dying in there. So again, just to kind of go back on what Chief Deras said, we don't focus on the people and how they choose to live their lives. We focus on whether it's criminal behavior or not, and have to respect their constitutional rights at the same time.
Thank you all. Our next question is, when homeless encampments by the river do not have sewer or waste management facilities, how is code/law violation addressed?
So I guess I can kind of take that one. This is more on the municipal level typically. If people are using that river for their relief or using it as a facility, that is against the city's municipal code. And when we are able to respond down to those and address that person, they're typically always given a citation. And that citation is prosecuted through our local municipal prosecutor's office. Mr. John Collins takes care of that. Generally speaking, those don't rise to the level of county courts where the DA's office would be involved, and go to those courts where we handle that more locally. Again, we respond to those on a complaint basis. We have used drone technology to take a look at a number of these camps and identify where they are and try to visit them and have them move along from a place that they shouldn't be in the first place. And so we've been able to plot where some of these are. And like the city manager mentioned earlier, we are very familiar with these individuals. We have a list of folks that we deal with frequently. And again, to Sheriff Vallario's point, we try to take them or get them to a place where they can accept a number of wraparound services. But again, almost an overwhelming majority of those individuals choose to be in that situation. So we leave them with a citation and let the courts decide what the proper disposition of that is.
A little different in the county. Obviously, in municipality, you just can't pitch a tent in a park and camp and do all the things you would normally do. When you're out in the county, the unincorporated areas, particularly BLM or Forest Service, of course, any of us are allowed to go backpack and camp and set our tent up. And what happens with all the human waste involved is, some people might choose to pack it out. Some people might choose to bury it. But until it rises to a level of a public health concern where we would have to get maybe public health involved, it really is the same as what they're dealing with, as the chief explained, in the city limits. Very similar to a lot of things where in the city you can't discharge a firearm. Certainly out in the unincorporated county you can. So there's differences in how we handle these and what we're allowed to do or can do.
Thank you. Our next question, and I'm going to combine a couple questions that we got. This is regarding fire risk and fire concerns. And so fire from homeless camps is the biggest danger to our entire town. What practical solutions are there to this huge risk? And then more specifically, what is or can be done to reduce the fire risk at the homeless camp behind Walmart? I think I'll start with Sheriff Vallario on that.
Yeah, I would challenge that. Certainly it's always serious, and I might defer to the fire guys, but I would say you're more likely to see fires started by lightning strikes. We obviously see them along the highway because of, sparks and chains and equipment on the highway. I have to tell you honestly, I've been in law enforcement for 38 years in this community, and this is the only fire that I can recall that was actually caused by somebody who was homeless living in an encampment on either private property or out on federal land. So although the potential is is always there for the risk. I guess I would say we don't want to ignore it, but we want to sort of look at the the probability, possibility sort of scenario and do what we can. I mean, obviously more of the fire management is going to defer to the fire district and that kind of thing. But again, we want to make sure that we're understanding fully what history has shown us, what the likelihood is, and right now the likelihood is that it could be a fire danger, but we really haven't seen any type of serious fire danger short of the fire that just occurred here a couple weeks ago.
Would you like to address it?
I'm sure some people have noticed that there has been a lot of work happening up on the hillside, especially around the Midlands Cemetery. We've had some youth call out there, but also with the Parks and Rec teams, they go out, they do mitigation work around, they do clean up on city property. And then, as I was mentioning earlier, it's preventing the opportunity for some of these folks to get some of these materials that they're using to build their encampments. Things we've noticed is mattresses, things like pallets. And then the real concern is the propane tanks. And so I will mention it is kind of it falls on a social responsibility, and it's kind of through education, but it's also, preventing petty theft in our town, right? Locking things up, locking your bikes up, locking your propane tanks up from your barbecues. Little things that can go a long way just to preventing things from walking off and ending up on the hillsides and then potentially causing a fire down the line.
And the piece that we're talking about with the fire that occurred above Walmart, it's private property. And so there's obviously the business section, there's this chunk of private property. Above them is BLM, which is issue for the federal guys to deal with. But part of that being private property is, at least from a law enforcement perspective, limitations on what we can do. You're the property owner. You are somewhat responsible to maintain, what's going on your property. Yes, there's times where, the city or the county or somebody might come in and say, for example, in your home, your weeds are overgrown or you have some type of fire hazard in your backyard. But again, there has to be some understanding too that this is a private property matter and the owners of the property are somewhat responsible to mitigate those hazards as well.
I would point out also, from a prosecution standpoint, right, if things rise to the level of arson, there are several arson related charges. Obviously, the bulk of what this would be is the classification of the crime, where we talked about trespass being kind of that lower level petty offense. Arson starts out that way as a petty offense if the value of the damage associated with the fire is under 300, and then it sort of increases up through and including a class 2 felony. I recognize that just from a climate perspective, the danger to the community ebbs and flows based upon the time of year associated with those fires. In those instances in which there are risks of harm to others, then those are going to be cases that are identified, at least from my perspective, on my priority list of offenses that require special attention from the prosecutors on our team.
Thank you all. Next question, related. What is the specific interagency group coordinating emergency planning and prevention to evacuation for our entire region?
I think I can begin to respond to that. Our community, City of Glenwood Springs, has done quite a bit in this regard. We, through Fire Deputy Chief Doug Gerald, and a number of people on our fire department have created an evacuation plan to include all the disciplines that we have within the city, the various city departments, and the Communications Authority, Garfield County Communications Authority, to coordinate what evacuations might look like. And so those documents have been made public now for at least a year, I'd say, or better. We presented that document in public at the city council meeting a year ago, at least. They're widely available on the fire department's website. We've gone, again, through the Communications Authority and done some scenario training in how 911 notifications can be made and I'll take this opportunity to encourage everybody to go to the Garco 911 website and register for those alerts. We have a number of ways we can reach people, even in other languages, when there is a serious situation that requires an evacuation of a particular neighborhood, right down to what we would call a polygons, which delineate various neighborhoods and how we can notify them, either individually in those polygons or in mass communication for a larger part of our community. So a great deal of expense, time, and resources have been spent in this regard. And again, if you have questions about that, you can call us at the fire department. We can get you that document, or you can go online and find those documents as well.
And yeah, and I would just go in terms of Garfield County. So Garfield County is 3,000 square miles. And of course, we interface with all the municipalities and other areas. And we obviously have an emergency, excuse me, operations plan too, which includes evacuation, includes a lot of different issues, sheltering and all those things. But evacuation is an interesting issue, because some people would really like to be able to go to a document and say, you know, this is the route I should take, or this is what I should do. And I've always been leery of that, because we don't know what the situation is. If it's a flood, we may want you to evacuate in a different direction than if it was a wildfire. And so it's really dependent upon what the scenario is, what the emergency is. Obviously, most of the time in this area, we're talking about fires, although we have had issues with floods and particularly on Fork River and other places. So it's really good to be alert, to maintain, do what the chief said, register with our emergency notification systems, and be aware of that. When we have an active fire, and I'll defer a little to the fire guys, but we try to set up plans where, based on the fire behavior, we have a pre-evacuation area where we'll notify people ahead of time that maybe you want to get ready to be prepared, and then whatever triggers the next event is, now we have to evacuate you, and people are start to evacuate. So it's a manpower intensive process. I can tell you that we send deputies to every location, every door, every address in an evacuation zone to try to either notify people to evacuate, help them to evacuate, or if they refuse to evacuate, we mark that too, in case, worst case scenario happens and we have a tragic event. So there's a lot to it. There's a lot to evacuation. There's a lot to, and I would add, on our website at the Garfield County Emergency Operations website, there's a plethora of information about how to prepare for pre-evac, what to take, what not to take, relocation areas, or if your family gets separated, where are you all going to meet up? And so there's a lot of information that we have available on the Garfield County website to handle all of that stuff.
One last thing I'd say on that is that with the Sheriff's Office, CDOT, and a number of other entities are in this area, based upon past practice and historical information about how these evacuations and some of the choke points operate, and where we've had problems in the past, we've instituted 2 different additional exits onto the freeway. We call those A-line breaks, so that the city has taken over a right-of-way in one case in particular, so we can bring mass numbers of people out of their neighborhoods and onto the highway. And that takes a significant amount of coordination, as you can imagine. And so again, CDOT, the state patrol, have worked with us in how we might coordinate some of those plans and what those plans might look like to get large numbers of people out of a particular area in rapid fashion.
Yeah, I was here, I was working for the police department. If those of you don't know, I started my career at Glenwood Springs Police Department, and I was here during the Storm King fire, the Coal Seam fire, and evacuation can be quite chaotic, and again, a lot of choke points and stuff. So we're all working on ways to minimize that and to get the flow better, so we can get people out of those areas as soon as possible.
Thank you all. Next question. Do any of the participants have experience providing assistance to this population? Why not include the actual service providers?
Can we take that one? Sure. Yeah. So tonight, we really wanted to focus on what the city and the county can do and what we are doing. We do have some service providers here. I don't know that anybody in this room has ever done that. That wasn't really the focus for tonight. Tonight, we're talking about the homeless population that really isn't interested in those services.
Next question. Can Glenwood Springs become less attractive for homeless migration by reducing services and deterring unhoused living opportunities?
Yes, I mean, I think the answer certainly is yes, but Chief, I'll
I think that with the police department, we've been pretty aggressive in making services available to people that want those services. Something we do every single day. And again, we can lead somebody to water if they choose not to drink. We really can't do a whole lot there. And where the people that are, I would suggest, are a criminal element who choose to engage in criminal behavior and deviant or defiance in established law, then we're very aggressive about introducing them to the criminal justice process to try to modify that behavior, make it as uncomfortable for them as possible so that they choose to either comply with societal norms and what our community demands and expects of them, or they're just going to continue to have visits from our law enforcement professionals in this valley to, again, try to encourage them to comply with what we're asking them to do. Again, we can't make that happen. We can facilitate that process for them, and then let the judicial system take its course. But where we have people, I want to really, again, make this distinction, where we have people who are down on their luck, or they're, you know, the father or mother's lost their job, or they find themselves on the side of the highway through some misfortunate situation. We have resources as a city, and we have used those resources to get them into some shelter, some safe housing, temporary housing, meals, refuge, whatever that might look like. And we've been pretty successful in that endeavor. And again, it comes at an expense, but we have the resources set aside to deal with them. But I think largely with this conversation tonight is focused on the people that Mr. Boyd has talked about, those who choose not to be part of the solution, but rather part of the problem.
No, real quick, those are the focus of the people that, again, don't want those services. Like I opened up with, for whatever reason, want to be homeless, limited employment. So those are the people that we're focusing on. Similar in fashion in terms of available services, the sheriff's office provides connection, sort of a warm handoff, as we call it, with services. But that's more people that are leaving jail, and rather than just slamming the door behind them and they have nowhere to go or reoffend and everything, we have connections to a lot of those same services that we're talking about. Everything from housing to programs to help them, obviously not commit another offense and get thrown back in jail. A little bit of a different topic, but those services are out there. But again, we can't force them to do it. If they walk out the jail and they say, "I'm not interested in any of your services, I'm going to go back up to my camp on the hillside," that's all we can do.
It's just from a prosecution standpoint, well, I mean, on one hand, of course, right? You can argue that provide no service and the incentive to remain goes away. I think my responsibility incorporates trying to identify whether a person is a risk to the safety of the community. And if they are not, then whether or not they can be rehabilitated or genuinely want to be rehabilitated. My experience has been that, like I said, at the prospect of 10 days in jail, they lose some motivation to seek that rehabilitation. But there's a number of barriers to their success within the court supervision. Not having a house is just one of those, typically.
And then I believe you all began answering this question. I'm going to skip ahead to what resources do you provide when asking people to, quote, move along? How do you avoid putting people in even more dangerous situations or separating people from the few resources they have?
I'll start that off because, again, from the bigger perspective of Garfield County, if we're encountering somebody that's homeless in the Glenwood area, and the idea of move along, well, I can't very well bring them to rifle, because now it becomes a rifle problem and I'm going to get yelled at by people in rifle. So it's a frustrating problem for us, because we can say move along, but while they're moving to another community, other communities are saying move along, and then they're moving this way. It's a constant motion of movement of homeless people. Sure, some of them have been here and stay here for a while, but again, it's a bigger problem than just the City of Glenwood Springs, where Rifle has homeless issues, and Denver has homeless issues, and Sioux Falls has homeless issues. And so to just move them along really isn't solving anything. It just becomes a revolving door.
Uh, also on the same footprint, are there any social agencies that can assist in managing those homeless that assist community safety?
I'm not sure about the community safety piece. There are a number of charitable organizations in City of Glenwood Springs. I would suggest probably around us and sort of in communities nearby that do provide a number of services, you know, whether it's job assistance, helping people get IDs or food and shelter. And there are a number of faith-based organizations and then again, charitable organizations in our community in particular that offer those services. I don't know how far we want to get on the piece about public safety. And I don't know that I completely understand the intent of that question, but I think I'd probably be safe leaving it at that. Unless you guys have something else.
Well, just that, you know, it's not often or just singularly, you know, they don't have a house. It often involves other things that I've identified as being barriers to their ability to lead a more pro-social lifestyle. And that sometimes includes things like mental illness and drug addictions. And certainly within the court system, we deal with that a fair amount too, for those that are homeless and those that are not. And, you know, they have supervision that connects them with those resources, whether it be locally, virtually, or otherwise. So there are resources available if someone genuinely wants to rehabilitate and reform themselves.
All right, and I'm going to take this opportunity to point folks to just generally for resources. A good place to start is 211colorado.org. That connects folks to any and all service providers across many different areas of service. And so that's definitely a good place to start. And we will also put up a slide at the end with a couple other local facing resources. But moving to our next question, is it possible for Glenwood Springs to build/provide a homeless shelter? I think that's a Steve question.
Yes, it does.
So that is a topic of conversation that we've had with City Council. There are a lot of pros and cons to that. We are currently looking into what's working and not working in other communities. But yes, that is something that's on the table. It's being discussed currently.
Next question, is there anything going to be done about homeless people camping out in the Rafta bus shelters?
Yes. So again, like we illustrated, use some examples earlier, we are out at those properties almost daily. And we get calls from a number of people or the officers going by and seeing that. And then if Rafta chooses not to allow them to be there and they don't have lawful business there, then we suggest they move along. And if they choose not to do that or they demonstrate that repetitive behavior, then that's met with some kind of punitive action, typically in the form of a citation or a summons for the trespass that Mr. Sollars has talked about at length, or whatever other behavior they're exhibiting at the time. So we do go there. We do want to make those properties safe for people to use that transit system. We work very, very closely with the Rafta authorities daily. So I would say that we're absolutely on top of it, although it might not seem like it because we just leave a call, we go handle some other calls, and then we're called right back for another individual to include behaviors on the bus system, on the bus itself as they're moving up and down the valley. People are doing some things on there that are in contravention to established law, and so we deal with that as it presents itself.
This question is from Dave. What can we, the citizens of Glenwood Springs and Garfield County, do to help the situation and support all your efforts?
You want to try that one? I appreciate that question. And I think, you know, it was brought up earlier that the more services, the more comfortable people are that aren't complying with, you know, the norms and the laws of the community, you know, don't help those people, right? I mean, if you see somebody that you don't think should be panhandling, don't give them money. If you have any problems or encounters, call our police department. I mean, I think those are kind of the things that you can do to help. So thank you for that question.
All right, there are a number of questions from Kevin Goodman. And I think I will summarize them all by, his concerns are specifically related to the parcel behind Walmart, the Sopris Views parcel, and that Altitude Apartments is putting significant resources towards private security and other items. What can or is the city, county doing to support those efforts?
So if we're particularly talking about, again, this private property up there above Walmart where the fire occurred not too long ago, we've been working with the property owners, probably really more than we would normally, understanding the limitations of private property. But my deputies have been actively patrolling up there. Anytime that they call us and have a problem, we try to respond. We've made several arrests and or citations for trespassing. And we're actually, they were in doing a big cleanup project up there not too long ago. And we had committed deputies to be there, number one, for public safety, in case any of the homeless people were, trying to push back or create any problems. And that turned out that we didn't need to be there after all, but we're doing what we can to help with them. But again, the issue is, we can't commit all our resources to one piece of property. I've got to make sure that everybody is treated equally across the entire county. So we've stepped up our efforts to help because it was identified as an isolated problem. And so we were able to do that. And sometimes it's the best we can do, but we did take the effort to say we'll do a little more here to try to help the private property owner. But private property owner has some responsibility of securing the property, putting up posted signs, et cetera, and quite frankly, even securing it to the fact that if they have to, they go to private security, and that's what those guys do.
Thank you. This one's a little longer. I want our rivers protected. There have been homeless people taking over, quote, our rivers, the litter and deification or defecation rather, and the safety of the river is worrisome. Why are these folks still there? Why do I get a parking ticket for parking on my street, but they can live on the riverfront?
Well, I'll suggest a response to that. It might not be satisfactory, but I'll tell you the reality of it is that we have parking enforcement personnel, code enforcement personnel dedicated to that specific job function. We do not have officers or the resource to dedicate specifically to that river banks or that river area that you're describing. That can be a pretty large area for us to cover, on top of the amount of calls for service that we're fielding every single day. We have limited resources in the police department and time to deal with all of those things. So with respect to the parking ticket, if you're comparing the two, again, where you might find one more serious than the other, but we have specific job functions assigned to particular people. The sworn police officers, their time and training is very expensive and valuable. So when we can respond down there, either through proactive policing efforts and walk the river's edge or fly a drone and identify where they are, we do. And as I noted earlier, we do take proper enforcement action there. But again, we leave the person with a citation in their pocket and have them move along. They may choose to move down 30 yards from where we contacted them. And so to the person passing by, it might seem like, well, they're just there. They've never left. We are limited in how much we can do. We just can't throw a person in the back of a patrol car and drive them to jail and keep them in jail for any period of time, as we've spent quite a bit of time talking about. We will take the enforcement action that is appropriate and then move along. But again, I think we're in the neighborhood of about 100 known individuals who find themselves in this predicament in our community. And so dealing with all of them, particularly on the river's edge, is a little bit more challenging for officers to deal with that, because while we're dealing with that, then we have almost on a daily basis residents calling us about traffic in their neighborhood, or we need an officer over here. We just have a finite amount of resources in our community to deal with all of the problems all at one time. So to the extent that we can, we partner with our public works, our parks and rec department, and go down there and make concerted efforts to clean out some of these areas as we can. And there's a legal requirement to that. In fact, it's someone's home, even though it's on the river's edge and that's public property. We have to give them a notice, give them so much time to notify them that we will be coming by to clean out their camp. So then we try to come back and revisit that. They haven't moved along. Then again, we'll bring resources from the city to come in and clean that up. within a few hours, I would suggest, and Ron, you might know more about this than I do, they're right back in that same general vicinity, involved that same kind of behavior. And so again, we're right back to the trespass or you know, the littering or camping violation that we've been speaking about.
A few years ago, the city and the county got a concerted effort to try to clean up some of these areas, particularly some of the area behind Walmart, but over on the Red Mountain side, like behind where a Target is and up in there, we identified with the help of the fire department and using drones, numerous camps up there, and they pulled their resources. We had a company called Ecos, which is a cleanup thing, everything from, you know, regular cleanups to hazardous materials. And they came in and helped clean up, because we're talking propane bottles, we're talking human waste, we're talking drugs and needles and things of that nature. And I think it was fairly successful. We pulled, literally, I think the county had 3 or 4 dump trucks full of trash that were pulled out of there. I want to say the bill with Ecos was, I can't hold me exactly to that, but it was north of $60,000 that it cost the county and the city to get that done. I would say it was successful, but probably within months, weeks, if not weeks, folks back up there again, camped in various little places and various little spots.
Thank you. This next question is, I'm disturbed to hear the insinuation that people are choosing to be homeless, especially in an area with an active housing crisis and no actual homeless shelter. How are you prioritizing our community values and our shared humanity when interacting with these communities? How are you avoiding violating their civil rights, as Denver has been accused of doing?
I can tell you as a matter of practice, as a leader in law enforcement services in Glenwood Springs, our officers, and I'm sure the sheriff's office is the same way, are highly trained professionals. And so they're very well versed in the legal boundaries or guardrails. So to suggest anything that I'm remiss to find any kind of example of where our officers have violated anybody's civil rights. Any kind of complaints the community has about officers' conduct would come through my office. So I'm well aware of what those complaints might be. And the 5 years I've been here, I've not received a single complaint of this type of a similar nature. I can't speak to what Denver does or any other community. I defer to them for an answer. I can tell you here, if you're disappointed in the suggestion that people are choosing that lifestyle, I can tell you I've been doing this for almost 34 years, and on every single occasion that we've offered services to people, we have 2 choices. Here are the services available, or if you choose not to do that, then here is the other option available to you. And again, in the high 90 percentile of people that I deal with, they will tell you, I'm choosing to be here. This is the lifestyle I choose. Leave me alone, get away. Why are you harassing me? And those kind of things. And again, I don't know that I'd use the word harassment like they use it in that context, or it's complaint driven because they're on someone's private property and they're creating a public safety problem, or responding to a complaint in the public right of way where they're creating an issue or camping or somewhere like that. So I can confidently say that the people that we typically deal with day in and day out, they are choosing to be in that lifestyle, or choosing that lifestyle rather. And it is at no fault of law enforcement in Glenwood Springs or Garfield counties that they are choosing to engage in behaviors that are, again, in contravention to our community's expectations, demand, and established laws.
So I want to give you an example, and I don't want to take too much time, but we had this same conversation with the town of Carbondale several years ago. There were people that were panhandling at the intersection of Highway 82 and 133. They were concerned about public safety. There's a viaduct under the highway where the homeless would live. And I will tell you again, 38 years ago, I started law enforcement in this community. There were people living under the viaduct then, as there are now. So the town of Carbondale was concerned, and they asked me to come visit with them, and actually even invited a couple of these homeless people that live there under the viaduct. And this is the most interesting thing, which I 100% agree with Chief Deras. It's a lifestyle choice. They talked to this one gentleman. He was sitting next to me. He was currently at least partially intoxicated. And he explained that the way it worked there was it was very structured. Several people lived under this viaduct. They would actually have a sign-up sheet for when they would be standing out in the intersection panhandling for mostly money, food, whatever. They averaged $14 an hour tax-free, which gave them money to, buy their drugs, buy their alcohol, rather than spend on shelter. And the one gentleman was asked what he did for a living, and he said he was an out of work carpenter. And they asked, well, how long have you been out of work? And his response was 12 years. So these are the people that choose this lifestyle, the families that have been put out, the families that, something have, we have resources for them and they take advantage of those resources. They're decent people that were down on their luck. These are people, once again, just by that example, as well as the several we've been talking about all night, they choose this lifestyle. They choose to be homeless.
I would just say, as I mentioned at the beginning, that, everybody has a right to be treated with dignity and especially in my arena, due process. And whether that is somebody who is living in a car or who has a $10 million mansion, the due process that I provide or that they are afforded is the same regardless of those circumstances. And while I recognize that not everyone chooses this lifestyle, that number is not zero.
And just like it's frustrating for all of you in the community, it's frustrating for us in law enforcement too, because we're contacting the same person, the same people over and over and over. And there's no tangible results other than we know we're going to be contacting them again tomorrow night or the night after or whatever. So it's an interesting dynamic. But again, we're talking about people that for a variety of reasons, either decide to live this way and take advantage of what they can and recognize their constitutional rights and everything, and people that really are in dire need that can be helped and enjoy the services that we provide.
All right, thank you, panelists. I will say that we're at 6:56, and so I think this will probably be our last question. For folks that are joining us, we currently have about 75 attendees on the call, and about 20 plus more questions that we definitely are not going to have time to get to this evening. But we'll do one more question and then we'll let everyone know that any and all of the questions that we have not had a chance to get to this evening, we will post them and answer them on the city's website at gwsco.info/homelessness. But for our last question, we're going to go ahead and go with this one, which is it helpful if we find a homeless camp in a park or area to report it to Glenwood Springs PD or the county, or do you already know?
I would, I would ask that you do contact the police department because we may not know about it. I'd like to think that our officers are pretty well informed about what's going on in the community. We see what's going on in the community, but there are times when we're busy and we don't see that, or it might have just presented itself. So please give us a call and then we can evaluate it from there. But I always encourage you to call us anytime with any kind of question that you might have. That's for the City of Glenwood Springs. I suggest the sheriff will probably say the same thing, but I'll let him answer for the
No, absolutely. And obviously when you're talking cities, municipalities, a little more dense area, more developed area, maybe a little easier to find those things, although there's some very good places to hide, anywhere. In the county, it's a little harder because there's so much open space, so many, the forest and things, and they're harder to find. But absolutely, give us a call. I mean, I tell my deputies all the time, you get paid by the hour, not by the call. So if we get a call and receive and we need to go check out a homeless camp, well, then you do that. If you get a call that you got to respond to a burglary, you do that. So nobody should ever think that we're not interested, that we don't care, that we don't want this information. We just hopefully, based on what we've told you all tonight, it's a very limited in the terms of the criminal world, what we can do, the low level of the type of offense. But absolutely let us know. You call us anytime. That's why we're here.
Thank you all. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. as we conclude today's webinar. And again, a summary of the questions and answers, both that we have already answered and those that we have not had a chance to get to, will be shared on the city's website at gwsco.info/homelessness. And then also wanted to take a quick moment to show folks a couple of resource points. There's a lot of different points to get plugged in. If you know someone who is experiencing homelessness, 211colorado.org or Colorado 211 is a great starting point that provides services across many different challenge areas, whether that's housing or mental health or other barriers for folks experiencing homelessness. And then a local serving organization is the West Mountain Health Alliance. And they have a program called the Valley Alliance to End Homelessness that's bringing together a bunch of different entities across the Tri-County region. And so I would point folks to those areas if they're interested in getting more information or getting involved or connecting folks with resources. And then lastly, want to thank everyone again for participating. We had quite a lot of folks on our call today. It was recorded and is on our city YouTube page, and the Spanish recording will be posted as soon as we're able to have that rendered on our YouTube page. And all of this information, again, will be posted on our city website. And thank you again for joining us. We know this is a tough topic, but are very grateful to the community for joining us on this call this evening. And with that, thank you very much to all of our panelists. I'll kick it over to City Manager Steve Boyd to wrap us up for the evening.
Thank you, Bree. I just wanted to add my thanks as well. We appreciate your interest in this, and we appreciate your understanding, and we appreciate your help. So thank you very much. Let us know if you have other ideas or need help with anything. So with that, good night.